Your ex isn't a bullet you dodged, and I know it feels really good to say that sometimes, it feels protective, but I think that telling yourself that over and over again is something that can keep you from actually moving on. And I was reading something recently, some research on grief, specifically this concept called disenfranchised grief, and that's when it hit me. Many of the people that I work with have this habit of trying to logic their way out of the pain of the breakup. And it turns out that when we tell ourselves things like, oh, thank goodness I just dodged a bullet, we are scientifically blocking our brain's ability to process the loss. And we think that we are being strong and that we are winning the breakup, but actually we are just gaslighting ourselves. And so when I started looking into it, I realized that there are 5 specific ways that this narrative messes us up, right? And 5 ways that it creates a mental block that stops us from actually moving on. That's what I'm going to talk about in this video. So the first one is emotional bypassing. And so the problem with the bullet metaphor is that if you dodge a bullet, how are you supposed to feel? You're supposed to feel relief. You should be happy, right? Like you just survived this traumatic event. But the reality is that most of the time in a breakup, we are feeling sad. We are feeling heartbroken. And that creates a massive disconnect. That creates a massive conflict in your brain. Because if you dodged a bullet, but you're still crying on the floor, you're still feeling all of these things that the breakup churned up, then your brain goes, well, something must be wrong with me then. And so you start feeling defective for missing someone that you're convinced was terrible, that you're convinced was dangerous. It forces you to put your grief underground because you don't feel allowed to mourn a bullet. And so if this is resonating with you, this is the work that I love to do. So I would invite you to take a look in the description below. There are some links there where you can figure out how we can work deeper on this together. This is the stuff that I love to help people move through, right? When we are in this disconnect between what's happening in our head and what's happening in our system, this is something that I love to help people move through. So find those links and figure out how we can work together deeper on this. And so that brings me to my second point, which is the stupidity paradox. And this is one that really messed with my ego the first time that I realized it. Because if I sit here and tell you that my ex was toxic, that my ex was crazy, that my ex was dangerous, or whatever the narrative is that I'm telling, then the question becomes, okay, well then why did you stand in front of that gun for so long? Why did you stand in front of that gun for 3 years? When we villainize our ex-partner to the extreme, we inadvertently tell ourselves that I was an idiot for staying, and it slowly starts to erode our trust in our own judgment. You start looking back at your own life and thinking that you can't really trust your own decisions. And so that becomes a really shaky foundation to try and build your new life on. So then that brings us to the third trap, which is what I call the nuance eraser. Dodging a bullet is very black and white thinking. It turns a very complex human being into like a cartoon villain. And look, I get it. I get why we do this. It's much easier if we can have such strict thinking, black, white, it was this or that. It's much easier to focus on this annoying stuff like, okay, maybe they obsessed with this really trashy, terrible reality TV show that you hated, and you get to tell yourself, haha, oh, I dodged a bullet because I never have to watch that garbage again. Or, we even can get into the heavier stuff. We fixate on the arguing. We tell ourselves, oh, it was just a relationship of constant conflict and we fought all the time and it was this like war zone. And maybe that was true, right? Maybe it was the reality in some cases, but oftentimes it's not the entire truth. Now, is it? And so oftentimes we can use these things to distract ourselves from the fact that, well, sometimes they were actually really sweet. Sometimes they got our jokes. They were the only person that understood our sense of humor. And so true recovery, when we really actually want to move on, it requires us to integrate the entire relationship, all of the lessons, all of the beauty. And so sometimes we have to accept that they were a person that had bad traits and good traits. And it's not that they were a bad person, but as a whole, you two together were just incompatible. And so when we do this, it makes it much easier to grieve, right? Because we can see the whole complex thing, because you can't just grieve a bullet. You can only grieve a person. And so that connects us to the fourth trap, which is the devaluation of connection. When we use phrases like plenty of fish in the sea or dodged a bullet, right, we are treating people like things. We are treating people like an object, like a widget, and like they are just this interchangeable part of a machine that we can just put them away, find a replacement, and bring them in. But that actually contradicts most people's lived experience. You didn't love a widget. You didn't love a thing. Right? You loved a specific person. And so when you try to convince yourself that they were just a bullet to be avoided, you're stripping away the meaning of all of that time that you did spend together. And so I honestly think that this type of thinking can really hurt you more in the long run as you are trying to move on from this relationship. And finally, there is the fifth trap, which is the winning trap. If they are a bullet and you dodge them, then you won. But trying to win a breakup is extremely exhausting, and it keeps your ex as the central audience of your life. Right? You're posting stories or traveling or showing that you are succeeding at work just to prove that you survived this bullet. But that means that you are still living for them. You're living for someone else and you're not living for yourself. And so true recovery isn't about winning, it's about peace. It's about getting to a space, a place in your life where they aren't a bullet, they aren't a prize. They are just someone, a complex person that you tried to be in relationship with and who was trying your best, and ultimately you were just incompatible. So if these traps are resonating with you, if you recognize yourself in one of them or multiple of them, then I invite you to do some deeper work with me. This is the type of work that I love to do. I love to help people go from this space of this was a contest or they were a bullet that I dodged, and bring them into a place, a more true place, a more complex place, and help them start to do the work, the intentional work, instead of just waiting for time to heal your wounds. Start to do the intentional work so that you can move on from this breakup in a way that is efficient, in a way that is healthy. So if this is something that you want to do, if you're serious about doing this work, take a look in the description below. There's some links on how we can work together deeper. And so the last thing I want to share with you before I end this video is that we can stop with the bullet talk, right? We can move on from a place of wanting to win the breakup. But oftentimes you are still left with a lot of energy, the frustration, the pain, the sadness. And usually the first thing that many people do with that energy is that they head straight to the weight room. This is a piece of advice that a lot of people get, right? Just hit the gym. And they think that, oh, okay, I'll just go and get super fit and that will fix all of this. And I've got to be honest, that honestly usually backfires too, because I call this the fit but fragile paradox. And so I did a whole breakdown on why sweating it out, why heading to the gym and just working out super hard won't fix what's going on in your head. It won't fix what's going on, what the breakup stirred up in your body. And so I will place a link below. The video is called Hitting the Gym Won't Fix Your Heartbreak. And so I will see you over there. Peace, and I will catch you in the next video.